leftovers. Hello, everyone. Welcome finally to another event from Seoul Startups. It took us a long time to get around doing it, and yes, we had a few fuck-ups along the way, which prevented us from going there, but we're here finally, and we're so happy to see you. FYI, this event is streamed live both on our Facebook and on YouTube. So if you feel that there's someone who would want to watch it or would want to rewatch it, feel free to reshare those posts on your social media. We'd appreciate it a lot. Before I introduce our amazing speakers, I would like to tell you a little bit about Seoul Startups. We're the biggest international startup community here in Korea. If you're not a member yet, someone will drop you a link in the chat room over here. We are here to gather people involved within the local startup scene and people who are interested in the Korean startup scene. We're creating a platform where everybody can get connected and gain experience and insights from interacting with one another. But before I get into the nitty-gritty of what Seoul Startups is, let me tell you about this event. So we were talking about this with our fellow community leaders here in Seoul Startups, that especially in Korea, you don't talk a lot about failure, about how entrepreneurship is pretty much a road filled with fails and fuck ups and everything going bad before it goes really well. And we wanted to take this opportunity to have two amazing founders share their stories of tripping, falling, but then learning something from it and becoming better, greater at what they do. So that's why today we've invited Kwan from Say Global and Yuha from Tela. Funnily enough, both startups are in a related industry of language teaching, language education, but they're quite different, and hopefully the two founders will have quite interesting stories to share. So without further ado, I would like to give the stage to Kwan. But before I do that, let me tell you that you can leave questions in the Q&A tab here on your right above the chat. You can also ask questions in the chat itself. And yes, at the bottom of the screen, you can see a smiley face. That means you can send emojis whenever you want to show the speakers your affection. You can send us an appropriate emoji to show that. So please do take advantage of that. It'll be awesome to see everybody show some love to each other. And with that, no more from me, or at least for now. And now a little bit from Kwan. So Kwan, introduce yourself and tell us your story.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marta, and hello, everyone. I'm Kwon Win. I am a co-founder at Say Speaking. We're an online one-to-one, I would say, I guess, Korean tutoring platform, but these days we also ventured into content creation as well. But I started my company around 21, I would say. It's been a long journey, and I'm really excited to share more about it. But just first of all, thank you so much. I know it's like Chuseok weekend is getting close, and you guys are just taking your time out of the night just to join for a talk today. So I really want to try to share as much as possible. I don't have any PPT prepared. It's more of just diving right into it and just sharing my stories. So there's no script. I have like 2 points I do want to make in terms of the theme. But in any case, I'm just excited to share as much as possible and look forward to I heard there's also a breakout session at the end as well. So there'll be more things for you guys to ask me more in depth. But from my perspective, let's just jump into it. As you know, I am a CMO, so I work in basically marketing and sales for the company, which is really important, right? Without sales, you can't really grow your company. How many guys have experienced that, in terms of that area when you're struggling first? as a company, how to grow, because that's what I want to talk about today as well. Especially from the early stage. Did not have a marketing background. I actually came from um, basically liberal arts. Never really worked for a company before I started my journey with startup. I actually was just an English teacher when I came to Korea. Before that, I did research, and I was really focusing more on my path to become a journalist. Actually, I love writing, so that was kind of like I guess my career path. But lo and behold, I met my co-founder, and when we started our business, it was just a project. So I guess the first thing I want to share more about is just the early days of my company when I was just starting out as a project, and I was just 21, just very wide-eyed, not the adult person that I am today, but more of like, I think I was still very much just kind of like clueless about how the world works, and a lot of it was just trial and error. And I think when I was little, and especially when you were younger, I think you're always ambitious. So there's really no ceiling. You don't see it as much. When you're older, you see things with hindsight, of course. But when you're younger, one thing that I want to share with you guys that I've learned, especially with my fuck up, is I didn't know how, I guess, to keep things simple. I always try to overcomplicate it. One of the toughest challenges as a startup is how to grow, how to really market your company, because obviously either you're a new brand, you don't have a lot of clients yet at the start, and in our situation, we had a lot of competitors. I mean, we're not the only online Korean tutoring company. So when I first started, it was just me and literally just my friends. I had to reach out. Some of the very first things that I did was just go to like a printing company to ask if I can get some flyers. And I was walking on the street, making it so complicated for myself. I had no idea about Facebook ads. We had no idea how to use digital marketing back then. That was like 6 years ago when we first started. So we went on the streets. I remember like carrying those big banners that you see, at events. I was like grabbing that, went to like different university, Yonsei and Sogang University, and I would time it because I thought our first customers would be just like international students. I mean, at my age, at 21, that's kind of like my circle anyway. Like, I don't know any adults. So I went and we stood kind of like waiting for like the whole day, basically trying to get customers and then sharing them pamphlets. Just like, the local ajumas when you're on the streets and they're giving you pamphlets, that's what we did. And for me, back then, it was so frustrating because I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know about marketing. No one taught me any of this. So the good thing is, when you're young, you learn, you have to adapt quickly to your mistakes. So shortly after, we realized that we were just getting kicked out of all these schools and chased out because the security guards saw us trespassing. We realized very quickly that's not how you do it. But through those experiences, I do learn more about how to connect with people and interact better and figure out kind of like the messaging. Obviously, these days, you'll rarely find people, especially with COVID, right? You'll rarely find people like out on the streets anymore, just advertising with flyers. And that's when I really started learning more about digital marketing and figuring things out, while sitting in an office. And that's where I think I really started thinking more deeply about my role. So that was one thing. It's like, don't try to overcomplicate it. Don't try to re-engineer certain things because what may have worked in the past don't necessarily work now. So it's important to take a step back and figure things out. How can you do it in a smarter way? Like, why use so much man hours to try to physically find people when back then, of course, Facebook was so easy. With a click of a button, you can just figure out your target audience and let the algorithm work for you. So that was one of the very first things I had to learn, is how to really leverage marketing from a computer. I did not have to go offline and do all of the traditional types of marketing. Now things have changed, really, like the whole landscape has changed, and I can share with you guys more later on about my knowledge of Facebook and growth hacking, but that was one of the very first things that I fucked up. We spent hundreds of dollars on useless flyers that we ended up just throwing out in the trash. and we barely got leads. It was expensive. It was a waste of time. It was quite illegal as well. Just to do that at the university and trespassing everywhere we went. So that was one big lesson. And then the second thing that I also want to share about is when to ask for help, because I think one of the biggest mistakes I've made is assuming that I would figure it out myself. Because I'm used to being independent. I'm the oldest in my family, and we're an immigrant family, so we're very much. I think it's kind of like ingrained in us. We figure things out. When it comes to challenges, it's important just to be to know how to persevere, and that has been built into me when I was a little kid, especially being the oldest in my family. Is that you have to figure things out yourself, and I didn't know how to ask for help, or I didn't know, I guess, the right way to approach it. And I assumed I would have to study because that's what I'm good at. I love learning, and to a certain extent that works really well, but you'll reach kind of like a ceiling as well, because there are other people who specialize in certain things that are much more knowledgeable. So I think that came into play earlier this year. So I think around January, my company was like struggling with sales because I had reached kind of like a limit into what I was doing on Facebook ads, and it was getting much more expensive and getting really tough. And I didn't know how to work in the same capacity that I did many years ago. And at that point, I was like, wow, I feel old. I mean, I'm not old, but I feel like kind of burnt out. Like what's not working? Like everything is just not working at all the same way. So luckily, one of our friends introduced us to Upwork, which is a really neat website. I highly recommend you guys. Something that I wish I had learned, taken advantage of many years ago. But basically, they're kind of like a directory where you can find and meet really cool freelancers that just have so much experience in certain fields. And we need a growth hacker. We need to find somebody that can help us really hack Facebook and figure out what am I doing wrong. And I felt like, wow, like why didn't I do this? Because I'm the CMO. I should have known all of this, but it ended up being much better for me to ask for help. And we reach out to a really phenomenal growth hacker. Turns out he was like 21, super young, but also incredibly talented. And I had to interview like 30 people, but I found him, and we worked on a 3-month sprint together on really figuring out what wasn't working and how to leverage Facebook better. And sales just went up every single month since then. And I think like for me it was like, wow, it's just a no-brainer. Why didn't I do this last year, right? This year could even be even better. But thanks to just reaching out to him and really figuring things out, the past 8 months has been the best, really culminating into like the best year for us in terms of sales. We doubled our sales. We're making like twice as much, even more, and earlier, like last year compared to last year, we're doing a lot much better. We're acquiring more students. It's a different battlefield now. Like we're seeing a lot of great growth. And I don't have too much time because I know I'm taking up time, but I think that was the big lesson for me is you have to reach out to the experts when you're ready. But also you have to be open to that too. And for me, like I just wasn't in the right mindset when I was younger to ask for help. And I wish I had asked for help earlier. That I wouldn't be wasting so much money on Facebook ads, and it wouldn't be wasting all the time trying to figure out and troubleshoot. Like I learned better methodologies of how to troubleshoot ads better and figure out the right targeting, and just seeing how to also create better sales funnels for the company so that we can continue to reach more users and grow. So yeah, that's it for me in terms of like the two biggest things that I've learned through my fuck ups. Really figuring out how to make things simple and also asking for help when you need it. And those have been really important. Sorry, I didn't have like a lot of time to go into more details, but I hope that was a good start.
You got the ball rolling, and don't worry, we'll be asking you questions. Everyone, we will have a Q&A time, so don't worry. So thank you, Kwan. So all in all, the bottom line is don't overcomplicate it, and don't try to be the smartest person in the room. It's okay to ask for help. especially from people who are smarter and wiser than you in some domains. Next is wonderful, wonderful Yuha from Tela. I've known Yuha for some time. She has been my how can I say? I used to be her home group leader last year, and it was an amazing experience for me to see her startup grow and become what it is. But I'm sure she has also stories of when things weren't going so great, and I'm really excited to hear that. So, Yuha, if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your failures that led to winnings.
Hi everyone. I brought some slides. Are you able to see them? No? Yes?
Yes, we are. Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Yuha Jin, CEO of Tela, which is also a language learning service. We target mainly Koreans learning English. So yeah, we have we're in the similar field, but I guess our markets are kind of the opposite, I guess. And our tutors are actually English speakers. So I'll start with introducing our service briefly. So yeah, we're constantly talking about how chat is the new normal as our marketing slogan. And basically what we do is for language learners, especially English learners, they want to, when they want to improve their English speaking, they would go for telephone English or Skype English, those kind of services. But the main problem is the psychological barrier to it. So from the moment the bell rings, people get really nervous and look around to see if people are listening, all that. And then once they pick up, it's mostly nerve-wracking for most English learners in Korea. So yeah, ultimately people decide, or not decide, but they just end up quitting. So that's kind of the main problem. So there's even an expression our customers use where I just donated all my money to the company. So yeah, and we're thinking why the medium of communication has changed from voice. Although we're doing this kind of video chat or voice chat, most of our communication is now text. Yeah, and millennials and Gen Z obviously prefer text over verbal communication. So and if we think about it, when we're texting all the time privately and professionally, right, on all these platforms. So why don't we change the medium of language learning to chat? So that's what we're proposing. And yeah, this is just this is one of our ads that we did. You can see that we provide corrections like this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you can get a chat lesson anywhere. People around you, they can't hear you speak English because it's chat, and you get corrections like this, so you know what you're doing right and wrong, and more natural expressions. So that's how our service works, and we're an on-demand lesson, so you can book a time and tutor of your choice anytime, anywhere you want to do the lessons. And we provide, currently we have more than 1,000 learning units, all the way from basic English to business English. And yeah, I think the video kind of showed what we do during the lesson. The correction is a main selling point of ours. And we provide instant corrections and recommendations. So yeah, I'll just skip over this. And we provide, and our tutors competition is 50-1. So we're really picky about our tutors because they have to be excellent in grammar and communicating through text. So yeah, that's our value proposition is we're turning your failure of learning English into joy and fulfillment. And our numbers show it. Our attendance rate is at 94%, which is, I think, we're probably the highest in the industry. And course completion rate is more than 70%, which is also pretty high, whereas most other services are less than 50%. And people ask, how is chat effective when you want to get better at English speaking? Well, turns out there's research done where even if you just do text or chat lessons, your speech improves even faster than when you do verbal lessons, 67% more efficient. This is the professor behind the research, and he's also in our ads as well. Yeah, so not only is it less nerve-wracking, more fun, more fulfilling because you don't give up on it, but you actually get you are able to get better at English faster than any other learning method. And we're also providing analysis. And so because all of our lessons are in text data, we can provide analysis on like how many vocabs you're using, how your sentence length is, etc. And we're trying to develop this more into a more advanced analysis analytics in order to provide personalized learning, such as like areas of grammar and stuff like that. So these are our actual customers. This person, she usually gave up all the time, but now she's actually completed more than 500 lessons at Tella. This customer, she actually, after using Tella, got a job at an English hagwon as a teacher. And also we're helping business people as well, doing presentations, etc., just all through chat. And so so far we have about 100,000 users accumulated, and our price is about $60 per month. And now we're expanding into outside of Korea. So we have Korean learners all over the world, and starting this month, actually, we started to service in Japan. So we're going to start with Japan and go to Taiwan and maybe other countries. And we do have B2B clients as well. So yeah, I'll just, actually, we're now soon to reach $1 million US in revenue this year. Hopefully we'll reach 3 million, which is the goal for this year. And we're trying to aim for 10 million US dollars in revenue in the next 2 years. So that's our goal. Yeah, so that's Tella. And we started, I think Say started around when we started, I think we started in 2014. And the idea came to us when me and my co-founder were in university. We visited East African countries and saw that there were a lot of great talent, very fluent in English, university educated, yet no jobs. So that's how we started. And we wanted, the unemployment rate was like almost 80% at times. And there were efforts from African governments to solve this, but it wasn't working as well as they expected. So we came up with a business model. We're going to hire them as English tutors and connect them to the online English education market in Korea. Now, we first just entered this competition with this business model. Okay, we're going to do online lessons through Skype or through telephone calls. And that was the big, we got the prize money. And so we tested it out. And once we started the company, I think for the first 2 years, it was iteration. So we tested out the voice model. We saw that there were, it was already a red ocean, and there were, people had some things about like they weren't able to understand the pronunciation of our tutors. So we kind of pivoted into chat and tested it out, because we didn't want to compete in a red ocean with a disadvantage in what we're trying to do. So we came up with this new model and thought, okay, let's just try it out. So this is what we came up with, these online posters that we just made. And we just started Facebook ads. We started to spend I think $5 a day on Facebook. Surprisingly, some people started to purchase. So we had revenue from the beginning, but how much they were spending and if they were going to come back, that was the problem. So we just started with a few customers from the beginning, and through them, we constantly iterated our service. We started with our service saying, okay, you can talk with a tutor through chat all day. That was kind of the thing. Okay, if you can, whenever you're kind of, you have time, talk with a tutor. That's how we started, but then we iterated after listening to our customers, and now it's shortened to 25 minutes. Oh, sorry, I'm taking up too much time. I'll try to speed through it. Yeah, and then after that, it was supposed to be a casual thing, but then we learned that people really wanted a learning service. Like they really wanted content rather than being casual. It turns out people didn't want to pay for just casual conversation. And a lot of people actually, if they have too much freedom, they actually don't really make use of what they purchase. That's what we learned. So we started to build content. We started to build all these function build lesson types and build all these functions that I showed you in the earlier slides, leveraging technology. Yeah, that whole thing went on for 2 to 3 years. So one lesson is constantly iterate your service. And for us, we didn't really pivot that much. We kind of iterated our service until we find that sweet spot that people were really satisfied with. Second thing I learned throughout the whole thing is leadership. And I learned this the hard way. So after our product was kind of working, we got some seed investment and we were going somewhere. But then we started to hire people in East Africa as we targeted to. That's why we started the company. So yeah, we started with a few tutors in Uganda, and now that because our tutor base was growing, I thought, okay, one of our tutors should be the leader of our tutors. And she was a great, the great tutor, really excellent, really loyal to the company. She was great in so many aspects, but then I was very naive about organizations and leadership. So I didn't really think about, okay, is she fit to be a leader, at least in this environment? She was a great tutor, but as a leader, not that much. And that brought a lot of problems. And ultimately, it was really my fault that I wasn't able to assess carefully about who I put as a leader, because our team was really small in Uganda, maybe 5 people. So I didn't think it was going to be a big problem of who I put as a leader. If that person is good as a teammate, why not as a leader? But turns out, especially middle managers, they have to be really good communicators. They have to be very stable people, communicating, not being on one side, but really able to, I guess, be a solid communicator, be very emotionally stable, and be able to not make any conclusions easily. So because of that, there was so much problems within the whole team because of misunderstandings throughout this whole process. And our company almost went to the point where I was afraid every single day that people were going to leave. So I learned this the hard way. Yeah, but I learned about human nature, about leadership, and I guess if you have any questions about this, we can talk about that later. Last point I wanted to make is about decision making. In conclusion, what I want to say is, if you're ultimately gonna make that decision anyways, try to make it faster. Like if you already kind of know that this is the way to go, you have to. Of course, there's always a right time. Making it faster isn't 100% the right way, but if I was kind of hesitant to make decisions because of, let's say, like opposition within the team, or I wasn't 100% sure if this was right. I wasn't able to prove that this is the right decision because, of course, like we don't have any data to prove our decisions for the future, right? But eventually I decided to make all these decisions, but I think if I made them a little bit earlier, maybe like 6 months, a year, or maybe 2 years in advance, we would have gotten further faster. So one area was when we were switching to on-demand learning, whereas before we had all the lessons booked in advance. This is one decision that I probably should have made earlier, because the future trend was already going this direction. Another thing is changing to remote work and changing our salary structure from a regular salary to earning as much as you work for our tutors. That's another thing. I think I could have made this decision maybe a year early, but ultimately I was able to make that decision before we were financially too unstable to make this decision. But it really turned out great. So I kind of regretted it. I could have made that decision way earlier. And so as a result, we were able to retain all of those great tutors that you saw. And another decision I kind of regret making a little bit too late, or not too late, but a little bit late, was launching the new service. Internally, our team members were saying, okay, we have to sell our first product really well, and then let's launch the next product. But so I delayed making that decision because I wasn't able to 100% persuade our team members. But after this idea came, we launched it 2 years later. And this was actually what made our business start profiting and start having more purchase rate, start having a higher lifetime value for our customers and being known more. So it turned out well. And then I started regretting, okay, I should have kind of listened to my intuition. Also, I knew somewhere in my heart that I was going to make that decision anyway. So that's a big lesson that I learned. So fast forward, we were through those trial and error. We're now pretty successful. We're growing pretty fast, and we even are being recognized by publishers, etc. So through all this pain for the 7 years, now we're finally able to kind of soar. So sorry for taking up too much time, but yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And before thank you, Yuha, for a wonderful story. At the end of the day, it's all about timing and about having the guts to make the right decision at the right time. Before we jump into the questions by the audience, and by the way, audience, you can still post questions in the Q&A, and I will definitely get back to them. I want to start off with the fireside chat and some questions that I've prepared for you. And I'll start with Yuha. What is the one biggest mistake that still haunts you to this day when it comes to your entrepreneurship journey? Like one decision you made that turned out wrong, or one thing you said that came back and bit you. Is there something like that still haunts you to this day? Yuha, that's for you.
Yeah, sorry. I think I kind of went through it earlier, but just delaying decisions that I could have made. That's kind of I'm happy about the results, and so it doesn't really haunt me as much. But yeah, I do regret that in the business sense. As in terms of being a leader or an entrepreneur, the more haunting thing was about like not not making good judgments on the people to work with. That because that kind of comes with, I guess, like emotional. Damage is such a big word, but kind of, people get hurt in the process, whether whether we intend it or not, because there's kind of misunderstanding. There's always going to be, where people are going to think differently, take things differently. So making the, I guess, wrong decisions, or when with people are the decisions that really can haunt me afterwards. Yeah.
It's a big responsibility, right? And you've always got that fear that if I make the wrong decision, it's not only me, it's other people that are also going to be affected by it, right?
Yeah.
I have a bit of a different question for you, Kwan, because you are an interesting case for us, because you're a foreigner doing a startup here in Korea. What were the biggest challenges that you faced, and how were you able to overcome them as a foreigner trying to do business in Korea? Maybe you still have challenges. I have no idea. You're muted right now.
So sorry. Yeah, great question. I think, the first thing I always think about is just visa. I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges for any foreigner. If you're not married to a Korean, your visa is really at the, I guess, judgment of the immigration system. How long it lasts, if the rules are favorable 1 year, or if they change suddenly, in the same year, that's up to kind of like how the Korean immigration gods work. If you upset them one day, they're just not happy. They're just going to go ahead and make your life miserable. So that's one thing that it's always haunting me, actually. That's the thing every year. It's like, what's going to happen? Can I stay longer? So I think for me, that was the biggest thing. How do I go from like a teaching visa to really being able to not teach anymore, and actually go into startup full time? So I actually, in the early days of our company, when we were just starting off as just a volunteer project from 2014 to 2016 or so, that was just me working part-time, teaching English, and then working on Say, basically during the whole time. And then eventually, as I was getting my visa documentation and going to like the KIP program, that's also really important. That's on the point system where you have to take these Korean government classes to accumulate points for your residency. So that took a long time as well. And by the time I was able to get all the paperwork ready, that was like a good 3 years of just intense dedication to that. And while still being a foreigner and figuring things out. And then now figuring out how to maintain your visa as the laws change, that's also really important. So I think that's something that I think a lot of foreign entrepreneurs will go through. If they're trying to stay in Korea long term, they have to figure out their visa situation, or else they can't really do business here. And just being, I guess, kind of like being very agile with it, making sure that you prepare way ahead of time. So every year I get better at it. I know how to like figure things out better. I learn how to communicate better with the immigration officers, and I learned to be smarter and make wiser decisions. But that was one big struggle back in the early days. Now it's still a struggle too, but I think we cope with it. We know how to figure the system out more.
Awesome, Kwan. I'm guessing you're on F2 visa, right? The one that the most complicated one that gets treated a little bit not so great these days.
I'm due for renewal in about 2 months.
Gosh,
so wish me
tell
luck.
me about it. I'm at early next year, and I'm already my stomach is in my throat. So tell me how it goes. Yeah, so visa, not a happy place currently here in Korea. The immigration is not our fan. But I have a question for both of you, and it's the big elephant in the room. How has COVID affected your businesses? Maybe it affected in a good way, maybe it affected in a bad way. And how did you overcome any anything that was thrown to you by the current situation in the world? Yuha, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so our industry, I think, isn't necessarily negatively impacted. Though initially we did see a little bit of decrease in revenue, and I think it's because just the overall, if there's less stability in the economy, then people aren't going to be, spending money to learn new things, right? So I think that's the reason. But after a few months, it got back to normal. But I wouldn't say revenue skyrocketed because of COVID. So I would say it's kind of like overall, it wasn't like a huge plus or a minus.
Business as usual.
Right. But I would say overall people are now more open to learning online. So I think that's a plus for us. Yeah.
How about you, Kwan? How is it going with Say?
Yeah, I would concur, and I think for us, we actually saw significant growth in our revenue this year. And I'll show you guys kind of like a quick breakdown of how that happened. Because one thing that I didn't know when I was like much younger is just how to leverage Facebook better, especially with sales. And some of the things that I learned this year because of COVID and also because of the mentorship from just reaching out to people is how to leverage Facebook better, but also create a system. And that's something that this year we were able to create a system where we could reach international markets. In the past years, Korea was the bulk of our user base was in Korea because we were still reaching out to expats in Korea as kind of like our main, I guess, audience. Can I share screen? Is there a way to do that? I'm just going to see if I can.
The third
share
part, the
screen real
button
quick.
from the left.
Okay, here we go. So if you go to our website, some of the biggest changes that we've done is that we launched basically a new website. We also created an app as well, so you guys can also download right away in the app stores. But to get here and to kind of like really grow our revenue, there were a few principles that I had to also relearn myself. First is creating landing pages. So one of the best tools that I've learned this year is leveraging a system called it's called Webflow. I'm not sure if you guys heard of it, but I highly recommend because basically you can code websites without learning how to code. Basically, it's like plug and play. So this was a game changer for us, creating a very clean and mobile-friendly web page that can easily be loaded. One thing is really fast. It's easy to, I guess, like mix and match because there's like the tool itself is very like it's like plug and play kind of thing. You just plug in different images and really for us is figuring how to create an offer that would appeal to users. So this is kind of like our main growth sales engine. We sell hundreds of these every month. I think this month we are on track to make 300K and then hopefully 500,000 by the end of the year. So this is like incredible growth for us just because of this one game-changing landing page. We actually had to do a lot of trial and error figuring out, first of all, the right messaging. And I had to learn that using different A/B tests with like Google. I think Google has its own like A/B tests for landing pages. So we create the landing page, we test it with the traffic to see what messaging works well, what kind of offer works well. And this was the main offer. People love having a 50% off offer that they can buy. And then if they finish it, they get an extra $40 credit that they can use on the next lesson. So creating that system was a major game changer for us because we were able to start growing sales, especially from the States and Europe. Right now, over 60% of our customers are all from the States. So we don't spend as much advertising in Korea anymore. We're spending a lot more in the States, and we're using a lot of our budget on creating these nice landing pages that can acquire customers. So this is a major game changer. I'll share with you guys the website. It's called Webflow. I highly recommend that. Basically, we create all of our pages here. You do need a little bit of technical know-how to kind of like maneuver around it because it can look a little intimidating. But they do have templates that you can buy as well. So if you're not a designer, you can either hire one or you can just get some of their templates. But basically, yeah, this is like one of our old landing pages that we created. But it's really easy. You can like type in, you can put in videos, and none of this requires any coding at all. So that was really important for us, and that's what taught me kind of like how to leverage online sales better, because nowadays with people just at home, they're all online. So you have a bigger audience as well when it comes to reaching more people. That was a big factor for us with COVID. Yeah, this one was great. And I'll share with you the other website too. If you're curious about where we found really great freelancers, it's called Upwork. I would say to find a lot of great...
We already shared the link in the chat, so don't worry. We're
oh, they know about it already? Okay.
I was just going to ask how helpful was the popularity of BTS for getting clientele?
So helpful. So helpful. We have so many customers that just came because they love Korean and they wanted to like learn more about their favorite K-pop groups and their culture. We actually have a lot of older people too. That was surprising. We were reaching out to not only young people, because our main demographic is women in their 20s and 30s. That's like 80% of our customers. But then we started seeing older, I guess, demographic who are seniors. We actually have a lot of BTS fans that are like in their 60s and 70s learning with us. So that's been a really great surprise for us too, seeing just how our user base have really diversified into older age groups and now different geographies.
Amazing. I want you all guys to go back to the lounge and network. So I'm only going to ask 2 questions from the audience. The first one is going to be for Yuha. When you were raising money, how much of the time was devoted between raising and other things?
Right, good question. So we had our last round early this year. I would say maybe at least like 20-30% of my time, because it took me a whole year to fundraise. But I think it'll depend on how many staff you have. So we had a pretty small team. So I was doing a lot of the day-to-day work. So I think that's another reason why it took a little bit longer, because I wasn't able to devote like all of my time into fundraising. But my strategy kind of was, I'll just meet the people that I get introduced to. Because I tried cold emails before. I don't think it's that effective. It's better to get introductions. I don't know about the 100%. I think it depends on the situation. If you have your other team members able to handle all of the day-to-day, then probably you can put in 100%, and that might give you a higher chance. But at the same time, there's a lot of like good timing involved, because you have to meet the right people, and there's a thing of like being a good fit between the startup and the investors. So even if you're doing really well, if some of the things we're doing don't align with what they want, it's not going to happen. So and also some feedback we got was our team was okay, but they weren't really confident in the market that we were in. So a lot of factors speak in, and also VCs have their own flow, such as like they have, let's say they have a monthly schedule of doing the IR sessions, or they have a quarterly, or they have their own schedule, their own agenda and stuff like that. So that's why I wasn't really too much in a hurry to like close this month or something like that. It's not going to be up to me to make that decision. So, and also one thing is a lot of investors actually told me this in advance as well. Like if you seem too needy, they're not gonna, invest in you, right? So they always say like, don't look for investment when you need the cash. and they always kind of talk about like dating and getting married and stuff like that. Like, you have to be awesome yourself. Your team has to, or be presentable in that way, and kind of have the attitude or seem like, okay, we're gonna pick whoever, you know, we want the investment from. And personally, I'm not that kind of, you know, type of personality, but the main principle they're talking about is like, if you seem needy and you really need cash like next month, who wants to invest in a company that really is gonna like fail if you don't invest in them like next month, right? So so those things all factor in. So for me personally, I even for the next round, I don't think I'll put in like 100%. I'll try to make sure our team is on the path where we can still grow without the investment, and then but still put in more of my time to let people know that we're fundraising. So yeah, that would be my strategy, because like even if I put in 100%, circumstances might not be able to just make it happen. So our team might be going down because of that.
Thank you, Yuha, for an amazing answer to a really complicated question. And the one question for Kwan, what was it like first hiring from a mentality of wanting to do things yourself? Was it easy switching to the new mentality, or did it take some time getting used to?
A great question. I think it's hard because for a while you're like your own boss. So sometimes when you're on your boss, you don't really answer to people. You don't tend to like think about like things that maybe other people can do better than you. Because I think at a certain point when you're in a startup, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to be willing to try to do everything. But so much of that came to me at such a critical point in our company where growth was so important for investors or just for stakeholders. And I had to now switch off that brain of trying to do everything and trying to kind of like take control. And that was the first hurdle, really, is turning that off and kind of like reassessing myself, like what am I really good at and what can I delegate the tougher things to someone who can do it in twice, like be more efficient than me, doing it in less time, and justifying the investment in that person. So one thing that was really good is I learned how to just find the right person. I mean, what I'm really confident in myself is just HR. I'm good at finding talent. I think that's the one thing you have to also ask yourself as someone in this position when you're hiring is, are you good at reading people? How good are you at just figuring out what their needs are and how that aligns with you? Because the most important thing is when you're hiring people, especially freelancers, everyone's there to make a buck. You know, if you're trying to figure out who actually has the right I guess, passion and the vision, yes, you're going to have to ask certain questions that matter more. You're not going to talk about salary as much. I mean, it's important to compensate freelancers for the right amount. But one thing that I learned is I want to ask them, why are you interested in this position? Why are you interested in my company? Because how they answer it will really tell you, are they just in it to just make a quick buck from you, or do they really want to have a long-term partnership? And that's what I figure out. It's like the person that I talked to after 30 people, this person realized that, wow, okay, he was not only interested in Korean, but he was interested in a small startup that he can grow and really take it to the next level. And that was kind of like my proposal to him. Can you take my company to the next level? Because we're at here, but in 3 months, can we be here? And he came back with a great proposal. I read through everything. It wasn't BS. I double checked his work and his audits and realized, okay, this is the best person for me. Not only culturally speaking, he understood me from like my company's perspective, but he also delivered. He had a really great track record. And after the first month, I was sold. I was seeing results right away after even the first week. So I realized that, okay, this is a keeper. So I think that's important when you're hiring, is like, don't just hire because someone may look good on paper, but you have to ask them those key questions to really pick their brain and figure out, are they honest and genuine about having a long-term relationship with your business and not just here to make some quick money. So that's really important.
Thank you, guys. I would love to keep you here more, but I would rather end this session here and send you all to the lounge. Each of the speakers has their own little table where they will grab a seat, and you can join them there and ask all your questions in person. There's also a table with Seoul Startups where the team will be hanging out. So if you have questions to us, you can come and hang out with us there as well. And yes, that's it for today here, but we're not going anywhere. We'll hope to see you in the lounge. Thank you, Kwan. Thank you, Yuka, for joining us today. It was really amazing to learn that struggles can make us stronger and better, and it's okay to trip and fall, to make mistakes, to not make the decision or make it in the wrong time, to make things overcomplicated, because that way we learn and that way we become better entrepreneurs and better people. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in the lounge in a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.